One of the most vocal critics of the Democratic Party presents his case in his book, Justice Corrupted, How the Left Weaponized Our Legal System. And he joins us at the table right now. Please welcome Senator Ted Cruz.
Okay, we're going to start it out.
Well, they gave you a better reception than the Yankees fans, but that was a low bar.
They're from the Bronx.
You know, that's all right. I was pretty happy with how the game ended up last night.
Senator, the economy and reproductive rights seem to be the two driving factors in getting people out to vote this midterm season. What's your answer to voters who say economic cycles are to be expected? They're a fact of life. But it's fundamentally un-American that a woman's rights could fluctuate from state to state.
Well, I'll say number one, if you talk to people across the country, as I'm doing, I'm in the middle of a 17-state national bus tour right now, people are hurting. Lives of working men and women across this country have gotten really hard. They're seniors who've seen their 401ks drop 20, 25, 30% in the last 2 years, who can't afford food and rent and their mortgage. They can't afford basic expenses. And people are upset. I mean, the highest inflation in 40 years is making people's lives a lot harder. When you see someone wait in line to fill up the tank on their gas and they can't fill it up, they got to put $10 or $20 in. People are hurting. And I think if you look at the polls in pretty much every state in the country, inflation's the number one issue. Crime is the number two issue, and illegal immigration is the number three issue. And in all three of those, this administration's agenda has been a train wreck.
Let me just ask you one thing. So I know that the economy, oftentimes they say we give credit when it's good to presidents unfairly, and we also criticize them possibly unfairly because there's a free market going on here. So what would some of your solutions be as a Republican to solve some of these things?
Well, you know, it's very simple. If you look at inflation, the Nobel laureate economist, Milton Friedman, explained in the United States inflation has one cause and one cause only. Inflation in the United States has one cause and one cause only, and that is when the federal government spends too much money.
Okay.
We have seen trillions and trillions of dollars spent by Joe Biden and the Democrats. Just last year, the federal government took in $4 trillion in tax revenues. The most money in history we've ever taken in. The problem is we spent nearly $7 trillion, and that's what
we do cover climate here, guys. We do cover climate.
Ladies, excuse us. Let us do our job. Let us do our job. We hear what you have to say, but you gotta go. You gotta go. You gotta let us do our job.
They weren't even protesting you.
You gotta let us do our job.
I couldn't even hear what they were protesting.
Well, I take back what I said about the Yankees.
Thank you.
fans.
They're accusing us of not covering climate change, and we do that almost.
Well, I read it.
Well, I'm really glad you don't have a Van Gogh on the wall. That would have been a
But
problem.
notwithstanding that, let me ask you this, Senator. The conservative platform, I think, was easily identifiable years ago. It was limited government, low taxes, strengthening national defense, family values. I think it's a little hypocritical for Republicans to be able to stand behind family values right now, having voted in, the twice impeached former disgraced president and backing the president still, former president. But in 2020, the Republican Party didn't even put out an agenda, right? And I ask this question on the show all the time. What do the Republicans stand for, and what is the Republican agenda?
It's very simple. I'll give you 3 words: jobs, freedom, and security. When it comes to jobs, listen, when you cut taxes, when you reduce regulations, when small businesses expand, you have lots and lots of jobs. Under the Trump
government still.
Sure, no, government has important roles, but let's be clear. Under the Trump administration, with Republican majorities in both houses, we had the lowest unemployment in 50 years. We had the lowest African-American unemployment
highest deficit in years
ever recorded. No, we're at 31 trillion now. So I agree the deficit. Listen, I've stood up to my own party a bunch of times. But when you've got poverty going down, we had the lowest African-American unemployment ever recorded, lowest Hispanic unemployment ever recorded. That's a big deal. And this election in November, I think, is going to be a tidal wave. I think Republicans are going to retake both houses. And the biggest reason people at home are saying, okay, is my life better today than it was 2 years ago? And I think for the vast majority of Americans, the answer is no.
Come on, guys.
So we're back with Senator Ted Cruz. Yes, he came, he stayed. Anna, you have the question.
And listen, I've been very vocal and very critical of you, but I'm sorry that this has happened
All good.
in our house. You and I have been in politics a long time. I remember meeting you when you were first running in Miami. You were a Bush Republican back then, so was I. And we've seen candidates that have said a lot of things about each other. But Donald Trump went incredibly personal when it came to you. He suggested your father may have been involved in Kennedy's assassination, and he called your wife, Heidi, ugly.
Who, by the way, is very pretty.
This is what you said. Let me get through the question. This is what you said about him back in 2016 during the campaign. Let's take a look.
I'm going to tell you what I really think of Donald Trump. This man is a pathological liar. He doesn't know the difference between truth and lies. He lies practically every word that comes out of his mouth. The man is utterly amoral. Morality does not exist for him.
So I have to ask you, because, you know, I'm married to a Cuban man. I frankly don't know how you get over your wife being called ugly. I don't know how you get over those kind of calumnies against your father. But you obviously have gotten over it. Today you sing a very different tune. So tell us, were you lying then or are you lying now?
Yeah, that's a loaded question there. Look,
I think a lot of people have the same question. It's a very different Ted Cruz that we're seeing. We are. I mean, would you not agree that that's very different Ted Cruz than today's Ted Cruz?
What I would say is this. In 2016, we had a primary where Donald Trump and I beat the living crap out of each other. I'll tell you, Heidi laughed when he said that. My father laughed. By the way, my dad didn't just kill Kennedy. He's got Jimmy Hoffa buried in the backyard. It was idiotic. And we went after each other, and at the end of the day, he won. And I had a decision to make in November of 2016. He'd been elected president. I got a responsibility to represent 30 million Texans. I could have decided my feelings are hurt. I'm going to take the ball and go home and not do my job. But if I was prepared to do that, I better be prepared to resign from my job because I have a responsibility. So what I did is I went and said, listen, we have an opportunity to make a difference for this country, and I want to roll up my sleeves and lead the fight to actually deliver on promises. We were talking a minute ago about the incredible booming economy. We saw 7 million people get off of food stamps. We saw poverty dropping. We saw African-American poverty dropping. We saw Hispanic poverty dropping. Those are real results that make a real difference, and I'm proud of that record. And why did I choose to work with him, even though I was pissed off at what he said? Because I had a job to do and I had a responsibility.
Well, I would say your responsibility was to the Constitution and democracy, not to Donald Trump, but it seems to me we disagree.
I agree, and let me be very clear. I think that the Democrats had been undermining the Constitution and undermining democracy. And that the book that is coming out tomorrow is on exactly that topic, how the Department of Justice and the FBI have been turned into partisan weapons to attack the political opponents of the Biden
administration. But your guy that you're supporting gave no respect to the Justice Department, gave no respect to how it's supposed to work. He doesn't recognize a subpoena. We got to fight to get people to come and do something. Well, you're talking about we corrupted it. You guys don't pay any attention to it.
Well,
that's a great talking point.
I don't do talking points. This is just how I feel.
But it happens not to be true.
Oh, honey.
So if you look at, you guys at the beginning of the show had this long discussion about, is Donald Trump going to testify under oath? Of course he's not. Nobody thinks he is. And by the way, did Barack Obama testify under oath? No.
He never defied a congressional subpoena.
But you know who did? You know who did? Eric Holder, the Attorney General of the United States, was held in contempt and tried to cover up the malfeasance of the Department of Justice. He refused to show up for the subpoena. He was held in contempt of Congress.
Weaponized the Department of Justice.
Give me one example.
Bill Barr. Real quick.
Okay, you said a name.
Let me get a chance to get it.
Okay, weaponized. Give me the target that was persecuted, because I can tell you who the Democrats, Merrick Garland, directed the FBI to go after moms and dads who go to school boards and to treat them as domestic terrorists using the Patriot Act. That is fundamentally wrong, and it is.
You write about that in your book.
But
yes,
let me get a chance to get in, Senator. But thank you for being here. Back in 2016, when it was you and Donald Trump were the last candidates in the Republican nomination, I remember working with my bosses on Capitol Hill, members of the Freedom Caucus, begging them to endorse you because I thought you were the true conservative who could defeat that man.
Thank you.
He won. I ended up going on to work for him. I've made my peace with those decisions. But January 6th is something I have a really hard time moving beyond from. And I say that as a constitutional conservative, which is what you pride yourself in being, how can you be okay with the undemocratic action of trying to disenfranchise 80 million voters? And do you believe Biden legitimately won the election?
So what I'd say is a couple of things. Number one, in this book, I have an entire chapter on January 6th, that if you want to know the inside story of what happened, listen, I recognize a lot of the folks who may be here who watch this show are not politically on my side of the aisle. That's fine. I'm glad we're having conversations. I'm glad we're actually talking to each other. America, there's so much screaming and yelling and hatred that if this country is going to make it through, we got to actually try to understand each other and hear what the other is saying. So I would encourage you, especially if you don't happen to agree with my view of politics, read the chapter on January 6th on the inside.
I read it as somebody.
Really good question.
I did. I read the chapter and as someone who agreed with you most of your career. How do you reconcile your constitutional convictions with what happened on January 6th and trying to overturn the election when 60 court cases got knocked down?
And just finally was
Biden legitimately elected? Because half the party thinks that he wasn't, and it'd be very powerful for you to tell the truth.
So listen, Biden is the president today. There's a lot of folks in the media that anytime... Hold on, I'm answering exactly that question. There are a lot of folks in the media that try to... Anytime a Republican is in front of a TV camera, try to say the election was fair and square and legitimate. You know who y'all don't do that to? You don't do it to Hillary Clinton, who stood up and said Trump stole the election.
They didn't storm the Capitol. They didn't try to kill my former
Abrams, who said that the election was stolen. They sat here and said it was illegitimate, and you guys were fine with it. Okay, so it's illegitimate when Republicans win, but not when Democrats win.
No, you know, here's the thing. We may not like when Republicans win, but we don't go and we don't storm. We don't try to change, but we'll go to
Did I miss an entire year of Antifa riots where cities across this country were burning and police cars were being firebombed?
I guess you did.
Your position is the left doesn't engage in violence? Really?
No, they wanted to noose our friend Mike Pence. Like, how do we make sense of that?
You just accused us of doing something we didn't do. You said Hillary Clinton didn't say whatever she didn't say. I'm saying to you, listen.
And she said it's sitting here, and you were fine with her saying it was illegitimate for Republicans to win.
She called Donald Trump the next morning, and she conceded the election, Ted.
Okay,
took the call.
As did Stacey Abrams.
All right.
She sat there while Donald Trump was getting sworn in.
Hillary Clinton says Trump is an illegitimate president. Hillary Clinton says the election is stolen from you. Hillary Clinton in 2002, George W. Bush was selected, not elected. Joe Biden, Al Gore was elected president. So Joe Biden claims George W. Bush is illegitimate.
Right? Or is it just you that gets to scream?
Okay, no, I agree.
Okay, then lower your voice because we are very close to each other. And I know you come here to sell a book and try to pick a fight, but we're not going to do that today.
But Anna, then address the... Okay, you look at this January 6th committee, which I think is a kangaroo circus.
And then I got to go.
The chairman of the January 6th committee objected to a prior presidential election. Representative Raskin, the lead prosecutor for the impeachment, objected to a prior presidential election.
Have you ever heard
and the absolute hypocrisy...
Democrats say this president, we don't like him, but we're not going to do our job. They did their job.
As the book described, the Department of Justice went after Trump.
Thanks for Senator Cruz. His new book is Justice Corrupted, and members of the audience, you're getting a copy. I'm sorry. I was trying to tell you I had to go.